Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Be On Sunday. And this is it. We are in our final countdown towards Christmas, and I just can't wait. I am joined today with two wonderful ladies. I have with me Kendall Pfiester, who is the local outreach director of Hartford, and our very own Lauren Roy, who is our central outreach director for all the outreach program. Welcome, ladies.
Thanks, Kurt. Great to be here.
Yeah, what's going on? How is life? How is Christmas preparations and all the joy of this season? How's it going?
Christmas is awesome. I love Christmas personally. We put up our tree really early this year and got into the Christmas spirit probably before Thanksgiving, but that's fine. I mean, it was worth it. I
feel like that's a dig at me because I told you I had my tree up all year long. I don't know.
Maybe a little.
I don't know if that's where you were going, but how about you, Kendall? How's everything going?
It's been great. It's my first married Christmas.
Yeah, that's right. You were recently. Yeah, that's right.
So it's been great to just celebrate that with Matt and start some new family traditions too.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, what a great time it is to be a young married couple because there's just so much joy surrounding this holiday. Yeah. And just the whole Christmas season in all. You know, I want to dive a little bit and talk about the outreach side of things, but, you know, just talking about this season and talking about all the things that led up to this. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you guys on the podcast is the recent video that was posted, I think it was a couple weeks back. We talked about so many of the things that the outreach team has done over the last year. And this has been such a challenging year in terms of 2020, you know, COVID and everything that's fallen in line through this year. But to see that video, I was just so inspired by all the things I didn't even know about. And that is the craziest part. It's like, you know, we tithe, we do all that, and we see what happens on a day-to-day basis. We see the offices, we see new people joining staff, we see all that, but we don't necessarily see the ins and outs of the outreach. And that's what I want to talk about. So, you know, thank you for being here. And, you know, I'm excited to get started. So, Lauren, again, let's just dive right into that specific video. There was a couple things that you mentioned in that video that really touched your heart in terms of, you know, what really impacted you. And let's just talk about that church in Turkey and what you guys were able to do for them. So give us a little bit of background of the church, and then we can dive into, you know, what Vox was able to do for them.
Sure. Yeah, that's a partnership that's been going on for several years at this point. Two very good friends of the church that moved out there, are raising their two kids there, are immersed in language learning courses. Their kids are going to Turkish school, and they are really just passionate about loving the people of that nation that is very predominantly not Christian. And so it's an opportunity to spread the gospel internationally in a space, in a place where they're launching a church. And so I believe it was a couple years at this point, we got involved with a building project that they had, and they were trying to acquire a new building for their church location. And so that happened by the glory of God, and they're now meeting in this place weekly. They're hosting groups of all sorts. They also have an app where they've translated the Bible into the local languages. Wow. They have music and worship songs in the local languages too, and so we've been able to support with that app as well and the development of that. And then most recently, obviously in this season of COVID, so many churches were transitioning to online services, not being able to meet. Yeah. And David reached out and was like, hey, we're looking to buy some video equipment so we can hopefully transition our services to a higher quality online. Yeah. Is this something maybe you guys would want to help with? And so I reached out to our missions council. We approved it. And I remember reaching out to him. It was such a crazy day. And I just sent him a quick text via WhatsApp and was like, hey, we're going to send this gift your way. Like, just wanted to let you know. And he's like, oh, thank God, I almost bought a really awful piece of video equipment. And so it was really just the Lord's providential timing to say, like, hey, don't do that. Something better's coming. Like, I'm going to provide for your church. And because of that, they've been able to just continue services seamlessly to those that are attending, which has been really cool to see.
Yeah, and sometimes it's so interesting to hear because sometimes we forget, we take for granted the fact that we all have cell phones. We all, watch TV online. This has been an ongoing norm for us. It's not just 2020 of COVID season where we're stuck in our living room watching church. This is a new thing for different people out there, and especially people who don't have access to all this equipment. And for them to be able to provide that and be able to give the people who are searching and who are, are just trying to get as much of the gospel as possible, and for us to be a partner in that. I mean, it's just inspiring, especially for all of our listeners. I've talked to countless people after watching that specific video, and they were just inspired. And that's, I think, is one of the biggest things, because we just don't see it every single day. So, Kendall, I just want to ask you, being a part of this, how long have you been on the team with Vox?
Just under a year. I started 3 weeks before COVID even hit. So all of my role has been learning how to do outreach in this COVID season. Yeah. So it's been really awesome. I just got to step on and see care and response teams kind of just gather around supporting people in urgent need is what it felt like, whether it was emotional or mental or physical need. People just showed up from our church, and that was, I think, one of my favorite parts of serving during this time and this year.
I know, I'm sure you had a game plan coming in. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and all of a sudden COVID, it's like, we're not doing anything anymore. Yeah. So what was it like through that transition of, I guess having a game plan, knowing what it is that you're going to do, all of a sudden switching everything around? What was it like trying to figure everything out from your position? Because, obviously everything that happened, it changed, and talking to different teams and everything that they did, we couldn't have church online. We didn't do this. But even the outreach team, has the COVID impacted your ability to reach people in your region of Hartford?
Yeah, it's definitely shifted, even from the initial, just coming, it felt like a chaotic time in the beginning, and it was, and still is in some ways, just like this urgency to figure out what serving looks like. And so we formed these response teams and care teams, and people were just flooding in from different campuses. Like for the first 3 months, it felt like a new person, new people, tens and 20s of people signing up every week to serve. And so that was really incredible. And so stepping into the role, and then 3 weeks COVID hitting, it just felt like it wasn't a schedule like I was used to or expecting of, we do impact groups once a month. We serve this many events a quarter. It was kind of chaotic. So people would voice needs, and we would send people to serve. And it was kind of just random partnerships forming. That was truly a blessing that wouldn't have happened without the COVID season happening, which was awesome. Yeah.
And people talk about outreach. It's not just reaching outside of our country. We talked about the church in Turkey, but it's also reaching people in our community. We're going out, we're stepping out into our community, making sure that our community and the needs that they have, they don't necessarily have to be a part of our church. We are just serving the needs of our local community. So what are some of the things that we've done in the last year through this COVID season where we've actually stepped into the community and, did something unexpected? I know we talked about we have the gas buy downs, and even the coffee where we go into coffee. Can you explain a little bit more about that? I mean, because I love coffee.
Sure, I know. I do too. And we had to get creative in this season of how are we going to reach and bless people. Where are they, right? Yeah. Everyone's isolated. Everyone's quarantined. Everyone's at home. And it's like, okay, what does this look like? And one of the ways was once local businesses started reopening, we actually saw just a tremendous opportunity to support local businesses by coffee buy downs or pizza buy downs or gas buy downs, places that really were closed for several months and now reopening and trying to get their feet back on the ground. And so we did the first one in New Haven at a coffee shop. And we just paid for everyone's coffee for a day and a half. Yeah. And the reactions were just incredible of wait, what? Why are you paying for my coffee? no, I have to give you something. Like there's no way that I can just have this cup of coffee. You didn't pay for my coffee, and just like countless interactions like that. But I think at the end of the day, it's about people, right? It's about just loving and blessing people, knowing that there are a lot of individuals that are going through some really hard stuff in this season. So job losses and food insecurity and medical issues and, family members with COVID. And so it's just like, how can we really love on people? And a cup of coffee was one way that we figured out how to do it.
I mean, you're not kidding. It's just a simple act, a way to reach people in terms of, we're not just sitting there handing out Bibles saying, come to church, do this. No, we're doing something that everyday people do. They all go get coffee, and it's just a simple little gesture that says, listen, we appreciate you, we love you, God loves you, have a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an awesome way. One of the things I wanted to chat with you about is I was listening to a story that you were telling about the cans of food that when you went to the grocery store and you bought all these cans of food, you were in line, and I could just hear the joy in your voice as you were telling the story. So if you want to tell our listeners a little bit about what happened that day and, the impact that it had.
Sure. Yeah, that was honestly a moment that took my breath away. I've never had this happen before. And so for our New Haven campus, we decided we were going to do what we called 12 days of outreach for the first 12 days of December. And so like you had said earlier, a small random act of kindness for 12 days consistently, blessing the community, blessing local organizations, blessing local churches. And one of those was we were picking up food that was going to be delivered to the Atwater Senior Center in New Haven. And I was in line. I had a full cart. And anytime I do this, I always get questions.
Just can after can after can. Yeah.
I look like I am shopping for a small army, right? Sometimes I've got multiple carts and I'm like, just, got one hand on one hand on the other, pulling them through the aisle. And people are like, what is this woman doing? And it was truly a blessing to go and buy all these canned goods and all these food items that seniors are in need of right now. And I'm in line, I'm checking out, I'm putting stuff on, and this gentleman's in front of me, and he looks back and he's like, man, you're doing a lot of cooking today, aren't you? And I was like, well, not exactly. Yeah. And a lot of these just yield opportunities for conversation. So I was like, well, no, actually, I work for Vox Church. We're, sending this to a senior center. And so I'm purchasing this food for seniors that are in need. And he like, you could tell, he was like, whoa, this is not something that happens every day. Yeah. Like there was just that like realization. And he goes, well, I'm going to pay for it then. And I was stunned. I literally...
You're like, wait, what?
Yeah. I was just like, oh my gosh. And I was like, no, it's okay. Like we've budgeted, I'm like making all the excuses. I'm like, no, we've budgeted for it. It's okay. And he's like, no, I really want to do this. Yeah. Like, I'm just going to do it. And the cashier like made eyes with me and was like, you could tell she was like, I've never seen this before in my life either. And so then I'm like rummaging through my wallet. I'm like, okay, let me just find a card. Let me find some info about our church. Of course I have nothing. Right? Of course. Like it's like the day when I need something, I don't have it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I don't even have info about our church for you. And he's like, I don't need anything. Yeah. Like, just let me do this. And it really, it like struck my heart in such a way because I'm like, man, people right now are so soft and so open to the needs of others around them. And I gave him an opportunity to enter in so unintentionally. And it was just like a moment for him, right? And so he pays, he leaves. The cashier stands up on her, like she had a little stool, and she goes, that man's about to get blessed. This is incredible.
Yeah,
like, I've never seen anything like this. And then the guy behind me in line is like, what just happened? Did he just pay for all this food? And I'm like, yeah, he did. It's going to a senior center. And he's like, that's incredible, right? And it just like interrupted the entire grocery store for a couple of moments, but it was just like a beautiful piece. And as I was walking out to my car to like load everything, I just felt that prompting from the Holy Spirit of like, I'm always going to provide for my people. Like I'm always going to provide for the needs around. And it might be through you and it might be through others, but like there's always going to be an opportunity there. And it was just such a divine encounter, honestly.
And you hear so many stories about that, how just situations, simple situations like that can affect, I mean, obviously hundreds of people, but just let's just say that man's heart, and then the man behind you, and then the cashier, and the effect that will have for the people that they tell, and and just the spider web effect of what happens. It's funny how the Holy Spirit works, and just a simple, I mean, you were all ready to go. You had your whole thing ready to rock, and then you were able to actually get double what you needed. I mean, you didn't go back that day, but you were able to just provide even more, which is the crazy part. I mean,
that was the coolest part of it, where after I was driving back home after, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like I can now buy double and provide, what we were going to budget for it is already budgeted. And so like, I'm still going to spend that for this organization. And then we were able to deliver it that Monday. And it was just, they were a little overwhelmed of like, whoa, it like filled a whole 6-foot table of all these items. And I'm like, wow, this is so cool.
Yeah, especially in this time. It's powerful.
Yeah.
So Kendall, hearing stories like this and now being a part of the team, what was your draw to work with the outreach side of Vox? I mean, obviously there's so many different jobs, there's so many opportunities, even not only here, but what gravitated you towards this team?
Yeah, so I studied urban and community studies and human rights in school. And so meeting Lauren, Kate DeCiccio connected us right when I started attending. And just hearing like the informed approach to outreach that Vox takes with city mapping was just so similar to what I studied in urban and community studies, where we're asset mapping a city before we plant a church there and then beyond too. So it's informed outreach. It's not coming in with an agenda that we make as a church, but it's informed based on the assets of a place. And then just really knowing and loving the people and community that we step into and get to be a church in. So I've loved that, and I've gotten to see that kind of take shape even in the past year in Hartford campus, just with how God has really led us in focus areas and just approaching outreach intentionally. And so one of those ways is through a school partnership that we've gotten to form through COVID, a connection that, again, we wouldn't have been able to create as just seamlessly as it happened. Hartford Public Schools was distributing laptops through the pandemic right in the beginning, and it was, again, just a kind of a chaotic time, like trying to figure out how to do school during a pandemic. And so Vox got to send some volunteers there to serve, and it just kind of translated really naturally into a school partnership with MD Fox Elementary, where we just got to recently bring hats and gloves to the school just to support them. So just like informed outreach, where it's a school located right near where we meet when we're meeting in Infinity Hall in Hartford. And so just being intentional with how we do outreach.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So before we talk about, there's one thing I wanted to talk about, Converge Focus 210. I want to talk about that. But over the last year, and this kind of just popped in my head, was there one particular situation where you were just stunned, where you just, your jaw dropped, you just felt the grace of God in any situation? Because you guys see it a little bit differently than we do. You guys are in the trenches. You're with the people. You're out there doing the outreach. Sometimes when we're in our community, we get caught up with work and doing, we don't necessarily have the chance to see what you guys see. So over the last year, was there one particular moment that you want to talk about that really kind of stunned you and just, gave you that sense of wonder and that sense of awe? I'm sorry, I put you on the spot.
No, I mean, there's many in my mind. I'm like, which one? So I think for me, what really kind of shined the brightest in this season was the way that we were able to partner with Vertical Church. That to me displayed just an incredible grace of God and in unity and in like communion with one another, serving the needs of our city. And so Vertical has an incredible outreach program. I'm really good friends with their outreach director. We talk often and connect often on the needs in New Haven in particular. And he had formed a relationship with the New Haven Senior Services. And so they ended up creating a bi-weekly delivery service for seniors all across New Haven.
Wow.
And it was incredible. to just see it happen. And so we ended up just sending drivers to go, and literally volunteers would load up your car with groceries. You'd get a list, and you'd have addresses and names and phone numbers. Wow. You'd call and drop off food on their doorstep, and like knowing that these seniors who are compromised and at risk can't go out. Yeah. And so it was just like a way to really serve in that way. But I think what was really cool too was just the opportunity to repurpose our trucks. So like, that we're a multi-site church. We have a ton of gear. We've got trucks that are loaded and unloaded week in and week out. And then we go online and don't have services, and our trucks are kind of sitting okay, what are we going to do with this? And so we were able to unload some of our trucks and use them to deliver food and bulk boxes and produce boxes and stuff too. So that was that was ongoing. That wasn't just one time. That was, on a very regular basis, kind of serving in those ways. So I think that's where I saw it the most. Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely powerful, because you don't even think about that. You always think, oh, someone's going to do that. But, we're that someone. And that's the crazy part. Vox has really kind of stepped up and presented what can we do in this current situation. And, that's a perfect story. What about you, Kendall?
Yeah, I got to see a couple of churches, and what really impacted me the most through COVID. We got to work with Union Baptist, who was running a food share distribution site throughout COVID. They went from, I think they were running it bi-weekly, to every single week. Wednesday, they would receive the food share food, and then Thursday, they would distribute it every single week. And so volunteers were coming from all over. Vox would send volunteers. There was another congregation, Assembly of El Shaddai, and it was just like the body of Christ coming together. So like you were saying, Lauren, with Vertical Church, like that was a huge part of it. And then from there, I got to connect with somebody from Assembly of El Shaddai, who was also connected to someone on our outreach team at Hartford. So it was just this like relational like spiderweb network just forming throughout COVID. And we got to do a serve day with Assembly of El Shaddai. So it was just like growing in fellowship with one another, serving. In Hartford, we did a park cleanup. And so that just kept spiraling. And we also got to help support Assembly of El Shaddai's youth ministry with a couple of technical equipment, production equipment for their ministry. Yeah. And so the verse in Acts 2 of just there being no need among us, like just relationally people coming together, the body of Christ coming together, like we were meeting different needs for each other, like as a congregation. It was just really incredible to see. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
So Lauren, we're headed there. All right. So Converge Focus 210. Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, this is kind of your smiling ear to ear from. Yeah. I mean, I'm just gonna let you. Excited. Yeah, I'm just gonna let you rip. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's been great. It's something that I've been really eager to just share with our church and to kind of let everyone in a little bit behind the scenes on what's been going on across this past year. So about a year and a half ago, as a church, we developed a global missions council that really helped us kind of streamline our focus areas in global missions and think through, very similar to how we do on a local level, thinking internationally of like, where are we called to serve, like across the globe? What is the heart of our church? What are the needs that are before us and the places where we feel like God has called us to serve? And so this dovetailed with me meeting a wonderful woman named Candace Fish who works for Converge International. And we started a conversation. She shared about a program called Converge Focus 210 that was literally created for churches. And so their role is to support churches and help them discover what God has called them to in international missions. So it seemed like this, again, another divine connection this year. And so we started the 6-month process with them of looking at everything about how our church operates and what the DNA is of our people. What are our people passionate about? What is our church passionate about? What does our leadership think about global missions? What does our church think? We sent out a survey. So there was just a lot of data collection and a lot of processing together as a team. And then they presented a few options to us of some potential missionaries and partnership opportunities through Converge that we were able to consider. And so our team prayed and discerned and met with them and asked a ton of questions. And so we're, Zooming with missionaries on the other side of the world, asking them about what they're doing and what it looks like and how has ministry been affected by COVID. So many incredible conversations. And then just recently, we narrowed it down to 2 initiatives that we are going to move forward with. And so one of them is the Go Tell initiative. This is run by a couple, Dan and Tina Gibbs, in Nigeria. They have a hospital there and focus a lot on medical care for those in that region. And then the second one is the Great Sea Initiative. And so this is one that focuses on reaching those that literally live around the Great Sea. And so there is work with refugees and those that live in the Middle East and those that live in Macedonia as well. And so we're still considering some of our options there and how best to plug in. But I do think moving forward, these are going to be 2 incredible long-term partnerships that our church is going to continue to grow with and learn with. And there'll be much more to come of what we'll share and kind of, roll this out to our church too and let them know how they can get engaged and involved in some of this.
Yeah. So to follow up on that, what are some things that we are looking for 2021? Obviously we only have a couple days left to 2020, and looking forward, what are some things that you guys want to accomplish as a outreach team over the next year?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest things that came out of this short clip, and shout out to Tim Stark, he created that whole thing.
I know, he's a magician.
My gosh, it was incredible. It is. So shout out to him, he's incredible. But the other piece too is I lost my train of thought.
No, 2021. No, that's all right. That's all right. Kendall, you could jump in at any time. You're like, yeah.
Yeah, I think what I just kind of shared over this chat is just about school partnerships and church partnership and just the value of partnership in transforming cities. And so I definitely want to keep plugging in with that with Food Share, other churches just intentionally developing relationships, continuing that relationship with MD Fox. So Saturday serve days are an idea that keeps coming up, and I'd love to make that a more consistent approach for Hartford outreach. And then also just seeing how we can get more plugged in with Food Share distribution moving forward.
Yeah, it's so key. You think about the traditions and you think about what these cities actually go through. I mean, we're so kind of stuck in our way of things. So the more that we're involved, the more we get our name out there, the more we just get to the people, I think the better. So those partnerships, I think, will go, a long way.
For sure.
So
I remember what I was going to say. Sorry about that.
No problem.
The one thing that I'm looking forward to in 2021, I think Tim kind of started the ball rolling with creating this narrative of what our church has been a part of and has been doing. And so a space where we're growing as a department is getting that out more and sharing the stories, sharing the testimonies, sharing the videos, sharing, the little things that happen in the supermarket when we're out on an outreach, right? And so I think that's something for us where thinking about social media and newsletters and quarterly updates and things along that line that I'm really excited to see in this coming year.
Yeah. And so for all of our listeners out there, how would they get involved? Whether they want to join a team, whether they want to donate, what are some of the things that they can do to be a part of this outreach mission?
Yeah, so there are local expressions of outreach in every single location. And so the first step would be to visit our website and get in touch with your local outreach director or contact your local campus pastor, and they will point you to the person who's overseeing those local efforts. And then as well, this is kind of new. I haven't told anybody this yet, but I know.
Spoiler alert.
We are revamping our local webpage as well. Yeah. And so we're in the final stages of development on that. And it will offer a complete overview of everything that's happening across every campus with a very user-friendly platform to just click and register to be a part of any of the opportunities to serve. And so we're trying to make that a little bit more accessible as well. And so we'll roll that out and share it with our church once it's up and running and live. But that's another way that I think people can connect in.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, I really appreciate it. Lauren, Kendall, thank you so much for being here. And again, your efforts are so appreciated by everyone. Everyone that I talk to, they're all super excited about what you guys are doing. So keep up the great work, and we appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you.